Hello, everyone, and welcome to your Miss Pollman Unit 1 Math Models test. This is your first big test of the year, and tests are worth a very big part of your grade. So let's jump right into this. It's a little bit of a longer test, but I'm going to try to get through it quickly. But if you need extra help, please make sure you come see me or Miss Pollman as soon as possible. Let's do this. So your first problem is, and I'm going to put the cover up right here, your first problem is something, for all these, I take what is like the test and I just modify it a little bit. So you'll have a problem like this on the test. So what it says is, at Louisville Middle School, the Pirate Council earns money by recycling cans at volleyball games. The graph shows attendance, so attendance is at the bottom, how many people come to the game, and then how many containers or things are recycled is on my y-axis. So this is X and Y. So your question is, first question is, sorry that's a little bit light, it's in green I know, but how many containers will be recycled if 125 people attend the game? Please pause your recording now. Alright, so you'll have a couple of type problems like this on the test. So we know if 125 people attend the game, my attendance, we have to look up, every line goes up by 25s. So if I have 125, that's that line right there, and it crosses my axis right there, which is right above 50. So if you had 60 or 65, that would probably be about correct. There's a couple problems like this where you just have to read your graph, and if you know how to read it, it's a very simple problem. Let's get a little bit more challenging. So now you have to take this same line right here, and you have to make an equation. Please find, actually I'll help you out with the points. Let's have a point right here. That'll be my first point. And my second point, let's put it right there on that line. So pause your recording now and find an equation for that line. How I find equations, y equals mx plus b. My m is my slope. I know you've heard this 1,000 times, but that's slope, and slope means my rise over my run, or my change in y over my change in x. And b is my y-intercept. So if I take these 2 points, this point is at over 50, that one right there, up 25. And my second point, I'll put in green, right there, is over 200 and up 100. Let me erase the board and get some of this stuff out of here. So those are my 2 points. If I do my rise, this one rises, it rises from 25 up to 100 because it goes from here all the way up to there. I go from 0.25 up to 100. That is a difference of 75. My rise is 75 from 25 to 100. My same point, my run, I rise, I have to run 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 spaces, but since I go up by 25s, that is a total of 150. Or you could look at 50 over to 200, that is a change of 150. So that's my slope. X always goes next to slope, and my y-intercept is right there where it crosses my y, and that is 0. So when I reduce that, my final equation is y equals 75 is 1/2 of 150, x plus 0. That's my final equation. I know I went through that extraordinarily quickly, but you will have a problem exactly like this on the test. So if you don't get this, try rewatching it, or please come see me right away. Okay? Let's look. Let me erase all this, and let's look at our final problem on this page. Our last problem says, explain what the slope and the y-intercept tell you about the relationship between the containers recycled and the attendance for the volleyball game. So basically, tell me what this equation means. Pause your recording now. what this equation means is 1 over 2, or my rise, my container's recycled, over my run. So what it tells me is that for every 2 people that come to the game, one container is recycled. That's all that means. That's all this fancy equation means. Is every 2 people that come to the game, one container is recycled. That is the end of that question. Your next question, you have to be able to draw an inverse variation on a graph. So you don't need to put too much time into this, but just quickly draw a graph without numbers and draw an inverse variation. Pause it now. There are 2 types of inverse variations. Inverse just means as one side, this will be my y, this will be my x. Inverse just means as one of them go up, so if my x went up, my y would have to go down. Or as my y goes up, my x would have to go down. So your inverse graph could look something like this. That would be an inverse linear if that was completely straight. Or, actually I'll keep that. Or you could have a nonlinear inverse, which means it goes down like that. So anything that goes down on your graph would work for an inverse variation. All right, so your next question is, and there's a question almost identical to this one on our exam, is a group of LMS students volunteered to build a new city playground. Lucky Pie donates 8 large pizzas for their lunch. The volunteers share the pizza equally. I would like for you to just sketch this table really quick. My top, or my X, has the number of volunteers, and my Y has how much pizza does each volunteer get if based on the number of volunteers. So if I look at this first one, if there's 1 volunteer, since there's 8 total pizzas, they get all 8 of those pizzas. So I want you to figure out for 2, 4, 6, 10, 16, how much volunteer does each pizza get? All right, so what I'm doing is, if there 2 people come, each person gets 4 pizzas, 4 whole pizzas, which is still a lot of pizza if only 2 people volunteer. If 4 people volunteer, each person gets 2 pizzas. So the pattern is that there's 8 total, so I'm going 8 divided by this number gives me my bottom number. 8 divided by 2 equals 4. 8 divided by 4 equals 2. So some of these will not go in evenly. So if I do 8 divided by 6, I get each person gets 1.3 pizzas. If I do 8 divided by 10, each person gets 0.8 pizzas. By the way, it is okay to use a calculator for this part on the test. And if I get 8 divided by 16, each person gets 0.5 or half of a pizza. Using that information, please write an equation. Pause it now. Your equation, my rise over my run. So remember, my y is my rise. So you have to figure out how much this goes up by every time. Since it does not go down by the same amount every time, this goes down by 4, this goes down by 2, this goes down by 0.7, this is not a linear equation. Not linear, so you cannot write that. However, if it did ask you to write an equation, you could just write something like, I know that the total pizza of how much people get is, I have 8 total pizzas, and I just divide that by the number of people. That's all I did right here. I took 8 divided by the number of people, and I had my final answer. So know this right here. Wink, wink. Know that, but it is not linear, so you can not write a y equals mxb equation. That's kind of a poorly set up question. Now, use your equation. So I'm going to use this equation right here, p equals 8 over n, to figure out how much pizza would get if there were 14 people. So I'm just going to take out this n and put in 14. Pause your recording now. So all you do is p equals 8 divided by 14, and when I do that, the total number of pizzas each kid gets is 0.57, or just over half a pizza. I hope that problem made sense. I would guess that might be one of the more challenging problems for many people on the test. All right, another piece of this test is your algebra. I hope we remember our algebra. We've been over it over and over and over. You have 2 problems. Excuse me, you have 3 problems. So I'm going to have you pause it now, do all 3, and then I'm going to go through them very quickly. Pause it, go. All right, your goal of every algebra problem is to get the x's by itself. But in order to do that, I got to get them together first. So for me, it's easier to move my smallest x. My smallest x is negative 6x. So the opposite of negative 6x is plus 6x plus 6x. That cancels out. I have 11x plus 7 equals negative 26. The only place you'll get lost on this test is you forget your negatives on this. So gotta get x by itself, so gotta get rid of that 7. Minus 7, minus 7. Again, negatives where people have a hard time. Negative 26 minus 7 is negative 33. The x and the 11 are timesing. The opposite of times is divide. And you have negative 3 equals x. I went through that so fast. If that confuses you, please see me right away. Second one is much easier. What I have is I have 6x minus 3 equals 11. So plus 3, 6x equals 14, divide by 6, divide by 6. Some of this test may not go in evenly, some of these numbers, so it's okay to use mixed numbers. So I got rid of that 6. 6 goes into 14 2 times. My remainder is 2. 6, and that reduces to 2 and 1/3. Last one, and another good, this one's a lot like the first one, another good one to know. Move my smallest variable. The opposite of negative 2x is positive 2x. That gives me 5x plus 3 equals negative 12. Minus 3, again, working with negatives. Negative 15 equals 5x. Divide by 5. Divide by 5. X equals negative 3. Know how to do all 3 of those problems. All right, new part of the test. So you have to write a y equals mx plus b equation for everything on. You'll be given different scenarios, and you will have to write that equation. So let's try this first one. This is the easiest one. Actually, pause it and try this one. On this equation, you are already given your slope. So my slope is 2. Put an x right next to it. X always goes next to slope. And wherever my x is 0, that is my y-intercept. That's my y. So wherever x is 0, that's my y. So my y-intercept is negative 1. That is my answer. If you had y equals 2x plus a negative 1, that also works. All right. You will have questions like this on the test. This is a challenging question. Let's see if you can get it. You have the base and the height of a rectangle with an area of 50. Please pause your recording and see if you can write an equation that works for every scenario. We did a couple like these in class, but how this works is we know my base times my height gives me my area. So if I already know my area is 50, you could have my base equals 50 over my height. So if I'm looking to find my base, that's what you could have. If I'm looking to find, I guess your base would be the only thing you're looking for. So know how to do this. My area is 50. I'm trying to find my base, and you just divide it by the height because it's division is the opposite of multiplication. And last one of these. So if a clown, we all love clowns, if a clown earns $20 per hour and they charge $50 just for an appearance fee, just for showing up, that clown gets $50 for travel and stuff like that. Write an equation for total earnings. Go. My total earnings equals 50 is just the appearance fee. They get that for showing up regardless, and they only get $50. And then they get another $20 per hour. So depending on how many hours they work, so my variable goes next to that one. You could have the top one, or you could have the bottom one. Both would work. Know that for the exam. This is the last equation that you have to make. So you are given 2 points. And I know we did this on our review and for homework. But your 2 points you have to do are 1, 1, so over 1, up 1. This is 1, 1. And then over 3, up 9. Okay. Please write an equation based on those 2. All right, so if I go, how I start is my rise over my run. So if from these 2 points, I am rising 8. I go from 1 to 9, so I'm rising 8. And I am running from 1 to 3, which is 2. X goes next to slope. Before I move on, I'm going to simplify this. So 2 goes into 8 4 times. So that means I go up 4 over 1 for each one. So if I continue to go up 4 over 1, up 4 over 1, I'm going to keep on this line right here. The hard part about these equations when you're given 2 points is finding the y-intercept. Because if I keep going up 4 over 1, I'm going off my screen right there. And my goal is to cross this y. So I have to do the opposite, which is down 4 over 1. So if I go down 1, 2, 3, 4, and over 1, I hit it right there. I am at negative 1, 2, 3. That is my line. And my y-intercept is right there. So that is how you do that one. That is the most challenging one for sure. Another piece of this test is just your basic skills. So just at the very beginning of the year, we practice adding and subtracting fractions. So this is just back to them. So remember, when you add and subtract fractions, you need a common denominator. And here's your fraction. Your job is to find a common denominator and to solve the fraction. Go. In looking at this, sometimes it's hard to find a common denominator. If you get stuck on that, you can always just times your 2 common denominators together. So my common denominator for 7 and 5 is 35. So those are my new denominators. Now, you look at your fraction and you figure out how you got from one place to the other. So you ask yourself, how did I get from 5 to 35? And the answer is you times by 7. Whatever you do to the bottom, you have to do to the top. So 7 times 4 is 28. Now, say you do the same thing for the other side. How did I get from 7 to 35? I times by 5, so I do the same thing to the top. 5 times 5 is 25. Here's the hard part of these problems is once I add it together, so 28 plus 25 is 53 35ths. I have to reduce it and put it into a mixed number because it's an improper fraction. So you ask yourself, how many times did 35 go into 53? It went in 1 time, and now you have to figure out what your remainder was. So when I do 53 minus 35, and I do my borrowing, that means 13 minus 5 is 8. That means my remainder is 18 35ths. And I cannot reduce that. That is done. This fraction looks like an absolute pain in the butt, but I chose this one for a reason, and I hope that helps. So you'll have one addition one, and also you'll have a division one. Divisions are easier when you know what you're doing. So with division, I do what's called copy dot flip. So I copy the first one, make it a multiplication problem, and flip the second one. Once I do that, just multiply it right across. That's 8 over 15, and I cannot reduce that anymore. That is it. Copy dot flip, and then you are done. Another piece of this test you will be given a line, and you will have to find the slope, y-intercept, and equation for that line. I know this can be kind of hard to see right now, but do that now, please. I always start with my y-intercept when I'm doing this. So where does my line cross the y? And my line crosses the y right there at -2. In my opinion, the hardest part about this problem is finding points that are exactly on the line, and there is one right there, and then there is also one, if you see it, where it crosses the lines evenly, no, and right there. See how it crosses that T right there, and that line goes right through the middle of it? Those are the points that you choose. So on these points right here, my slope, I rise 1, 2, 3, 4. My rise is 4, and my run is 1, 2, 3. So that's my slope. When I write my equation, y equals slope next to x, and then my y-intercept, and that is my equation, and that's how you do this. You'll have two of these. One is positive, like this one, and then you'll have one backwards, which is negative. We are almost done, but in my opinion, this is probably the most challenging one on the test unless you know what you're doing. When you know what you're doing, it's not that bad. So I made these numbers up, of course. They're exaggerations, but men and women working in high schools. And I have, here's my column for men, and here's my column for women. And then I have how many men work at Monarch, and how many men work at Centaurus, and same thing for women. So your job is, do you think women are more likely to work at, are less likely to work at Monarch or Centaurus? This is kind of hard to do unless you know what you're doing. So we have to look at women. So we're going to look at this column right here. And we're going to look at Monarch and Centaurus. So for Monarch, I have to find my total number of teachers. The way I do that is I'll take this column and add it to that column. So 264 plus 51 gives me 315 total teachers. Now, there are 51 women who work there. So that is my numerator. Remember, you can use calculators on the test. So when I divide these two or use a fraction, 51 divided by 315 is, sorry, using my calculator, 315. That is 0.16. So women have 0.16 of opportunity to work at Monarch. Now, at Centaurus, again, I take my total number of teachers, put Centaurus over here. 83 plus 17 is 100. And there are 17 total women. When I divide that on my calculator, I get 0.17. So it looks like, even though Centaurus has fewer women, with my fractions and my ratios, women are more likely to work at Centaurus. Take the total number and then divide it by the number of people there. I want you to try the same thing with men on each one and make sure to show your work. Go. With men, again, there's 315 total people who work at Monarch. And with men, there's 264 total teachers. So when I divide 264 men divided by 315 total teachers, I get 0.83. I think it's 83, 8. We'll do this just in case. When I go to Centaurus, there's 100 total teachers, and there is 83 total men, which is exactly 0.83 at Centaurus. So my question is, where are men more likely to work? 0.838 is bigger than 0.83, so men are more likely to work at Monarch. You will have to do something like this on your test. I hope that made sense. If not, please come see me. That is the end of your test review. I chose all those problems for a reason. You need to know how to do all of those types of problems. So if there's anything confusing you, feel free to watch it again or come see me. I know I went so fast, but I hope that helps, and good luck.